we bring you one of the biggest scandals, so to speak, in all of American history, about this case that shocked many, which was carried out by the Nixon administration in 1972. To anticipate a little, it seems like a whole movie of secret spies and investigations, a fight for the truth, something that is simply hard to imagine, but it is a fact of real life, and we want to share it with you. Can you imagine the darkest secrets of a government coming to light? Well, this story will surprise you with the Watergate case and how everything happened from one moment to the next by the hands of two journalists who, without being relatively nobody, unmasked one of the biggest scandals in American history, which led to the first and only resignation to date of a president in the United States. We are in the early 70s while the American economy was in crisis and there were tensions with Russia. During 1972, Nixon, our antagonist of this story, is the current Republican President of the United States and desperately seeks to be re-elected in the next election. To achieve this, he has a plan in mind that together with his allies, they plan something in the most secret of the White House that they will carry out. To do so, they hire professionals of the highest level of espionage with the intention of infiltrating them in the Democratic headquarters Watergate and spy on their conversations and movements. However, things do not go as expected, bringing plot, secret and a story that even after almost 50 years is still reflected in the history of North America and the world. Our heroes are two Washington Post reporters who will uncover every step and clue to unmask each of the characters involved in this plot, known as the Watergate 7. Alderman, Irishman, Mitchell, Charles Colson, Gordon C. Strachan, Robert Mardian and Kenneth Parkinson were caught in the act during their infiltration. The key point on initiation was when 5 burglars were arrested in Watergate, but it turned out that they were not just burglars, they were actually secret agents working for President Nixon. The idea of infiltrating Democratic Party offices was to bug and tap their phone lines with the intention of spying on their political opponents. The spies were known as the plumbers, since they declared during their arrest, "Yes, we are hired to prevent leaks, we are plumbers." In reality, they were hired by Howard Hunt and Gordon Liddy, who were related to the Committee of the Re-election of the President, made up of militants of the Republican Party created by Richard Nixon. It is worth mentioning that during the incident, Liddy was also overseeing a similar but incomplete attempt of the headquarters of George S. McGovern, who would later become the presidential candidate in the 1972 election. As if it were a spy movie, from this point on, the historic Watergate case begins being the first and only moment in the history of the United States, whose result would be the resignation of a president. This is where the two hero journalists of the Washington Post, Bob Woodward and Carl Bernstein, enter our story, with the intention of unmasking this plot that lasted less than 4 months, which would later force Nixon out of the back door of the White House. Therefore, the first step was taken on Saturday, June 17, 1972, when both journalists decided to go to the courthouse and listen directly to the preliminary hearing of the Watergate infiltrators. Even more interest was aroused when they discovered that one of the detainees was James W. McCord Jr., the CIA security advisor. It also came to their attention that others of the detainees said they were anti-communists by profession. Therefore, the news was published the next day in the Washington Post newspapers, signed by Woodward and Bernstein. However, when journalists discovered that McCord was at the same time the security coordinator of the Committee for the President's Re-election in Nixon's election campaign, they investigated further and discovered that there was a connection between the detainee and people close to the president to solve uncomfortable problems that could jeopardize his candidacy. This is where the plumbers would become known as the President's Men, which would later become the title of the book that journalists would publish in 1974, according to investigations into the case. Meanwhile, on June 22, During a press conference, Nixon denied his involvement in the Watergate incident, while at the same time, behind the public's back, the silence of the detainees was being bought by large sums of money. Carl Bernstein went to Miami to investigate the connection between them and the money seized by the police. He discovered that these donations were destined for the re-election expenses of the current president, whose administration was supervised by John Mitchell, Nixon's campaign manager, who later resigned from this position. Every day after the shutdown, Bernstein and Woodward stayed with some of the employees of the committee to re-elect the president in an attempt to obtain information. Two of them, an accountant and a finance control officer, were concerned about the illegal use of campaign funds, and were among those who disclosed important information to the reporters. During the meetings, Felt was an informant and former number 2 of the FBI who would not reveal information to the journalist. In fact, he would affirm any data he was given to check, but also he would guide Woodward to find the data he needed. In addition, Felt revealed information about the strategy that the White House was carrying out to spy on its democratic rivals and any character that could be disloyal to the government. Finally, with all the help received and key information, on September 21st, Bernstein and Woodward confirmed that former campaign chief John Mitchell controlled a secret fund to spy on his political rivals. As a result, on October 10, 1972, the Washington Post published on its front page the results of the police investigation, concluding that the Watergate incident was an espionage and sabotage plan of the White House itself to favor the re-election of President Nixon. However, the White House framed this story as an obsession of a single liberal newspaper pursuing an idea against the President of the United States. As life would have it, Nixon won the election that same year, on November 7th. Journalists Woodward and Bernstein did not give up. With the help of the Washington Post, they continued to publish information to keep the spark alive. In January 1973, the trial of the Watergate detainees took place, where a long list of convictions were announced, including McCord, the former CIA agent and head of Republican espionage, once again became the ace up his sleeve by sending a letter to the judge. In the text, McCord affirmed that he had committed perjury and that each one of them received threats to be self-declared guilty, and there were people of great powers involved in the matter, so he feared for his life if he revealed data about the incident. It was only at that point that the entire dam in general began to look for clues, so the Washington Post was no longer alone. It was unprecedented. With so many people investigating and making claims, the US Supreme Court orders President Nixon to turn over secret tapes that were obtained during the spying on its political rivals and use them as evidence in the Watergate case in court. In this way, the judges resolved the debate with unanimous vote against the president's arguments, so Nixon loses the support of his own members of the Republican Party. That is when the impeachment process of the president began. In view of the whole situation, Richard Nixon, the current president of the time, announced on August 8, 1973, his resignation as the first president of the United States of America. It is incredible to know how it all began, transcended and ended. The Watergate case is indisputably one of the biggest scandals not only in the United States but in the world. Two journalists from nowhere playing the role of spies, with anonymous collaborators with the objective of discovering what the White House didn't want to affirm regarding its relationship with the incident and the Watergate detainees, who in turn became witnesses to give a spectacular ending. Thanks you all for watching this video and do not hesitate to subscribe to this page. See you soon on this same channel.